everybody. I'm back. It's the Irocknitspodcast and welcome. My name is Cori Eichelberger and I'm coming to you from Victoria, Minnesota, a southwest suburb of the Twin Cities. And I'm so glad to be back for episode 6 and so happy to have so many of you joining me. The response that I have received recently from knitters all over commenting on how much they like listening to me talk has just been super positive and a little overwhelming. I just thank you so much. I try to read and respond to every single comment I get on YouTube or on the Ravelry page because they just mean so much. It's just really been nice. I feel like I've gotten to know some of you. You've asked me some questions and I've tried to answer and you've gotten back to me. So we've corresponded a little bit and it's just been really nice to have this kind of sense of community and dialogue, which is really what I'm all about as an ultra extrovert, right? Talking to people all the time. I have a lot to talk to you about today. Today's sweater of the day, I have a knit along that I'm going to start. I have a ton of giveaways, so we're going to give away all those patterns from last time and that book. And I have some announcements. I have a couple tips or tricks. I have a yarn giveaway. Gosh, there's a lot on the table today. Most of you don't know this, but I sit at a high top dining room table, and we live in a very nice suburban home that has what you would call a formal dining room. And as you come in the front door, you know, dining room to the right, office to the left. But we are not formal dining room kind of people. So I bought a 8-seat high top dining room table. It's square and we play games and do puzzles on the dining room table. And lately, in the last couple of months, this has become the podcast audio video studio. And so all my stuff gets spread out on this table as I collect it over time. And this room could actually be walled off and it could just become my permanent space to kind of live with more of my yarn, because I've taken over the office and I've taken over the family room and there's yarn and yarn pictures everywhere. I have decided to decorate some of my house with photos of people knitting. Not really paintings, but you know what I mean, large pictures of people knitting. So you can't really get away from it here. So I'm sitting at the high top table today and I've got a lot of stuff spread out around me and I'm just happy to get started. I think we will start out today talking about the knit along and the Chim-in-ney hat. So let's do that first. This is the pattern for the Chim-in-ney hat. It's a Christmas hat, obviously, that I designed a year ago because I had the idea to make a fun Christmas hat that people could knit and then take Christmas pictures with. So it's color work knitted hat, although some people have done just slip stitches between these sections and just slipped that up and not had to do color work, which works just fine. And then you make a green I-cord and twirl it on the hat with some little bobbles. They're just little stitch. I have it in the pattern for how to make them, but they're just little, see how they just kind of stick up there? And you just weave them into that. My friend Mary Brown's grandson modeled for me last year, and we grabbed him off the school bus one day, poor kid, and said, hey, here, hold this sucker, hold this present, let us take some pictures. And it's called the Chim-in-ney hat. And I'm going to have a knit along for anyone who would like to knit that for someone for Christmas. I think it's the perfect time to start knitting for holiday. You know, people can start wearing that hat around December 1st if you have a birthday or you just know someone who would really like to wear a quirky hat out around town. Or if you'd like to knit them, I've seen them knit for all the grandchildren and pictures taken at Christmas time or before Christmas time. It's just been a really fun way to celebrate all of the holidays, but since it's a chimney, mostly it goes for Santa Claus and Santa coming down the chimney. So I don't want to exclude anyone who might want to participate in that. Just because I celebrate a Christian holiday does not mean that everyone has to celebrate a Christian holiday. I certainly want to be inclusive for that. I will be giving one of these patterns away between now and the next podcast. So if you're interested, you can go out to my Ravelry page and just put your name in to win it. If you win this pattern and you have already purchased it, or you have already decided that you wanted to get started on the knit along, then I'll gift you one of my other patterns. So you wouldn't really be out anything if you decided you wanted to get started right away. So that's the Chim-in-ney hat. And I have had a couple people say that they had trouble finding it because they didn't know how to spell Chim-in-ney. But if you put Chim into Ravelry, Chim, with a space in between, it comes up. I think it even comes up with just one Chim, because there are no other patterns that start that way. So you don't get a bunch of other stuff that come up in your feed for that one. So let's do a knit along for the next probably 2 podcasts after this. And then if you post a picture of your finished objects in the, you know the drill, the no chatter thread, then I will choose a winner, and I'll have some prizes to give away. Probably yarn. Got lots of yarn to give away, and so we'll go with that. So that's the Chim-in-ney hat. Today I am wearing a sweater that I did not knit. This is a Dale sweater. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but it says Dale Classic right here. You can purchase these sweaters online at daleofnorway.com. They always have a sales section, so they're quite expensive. I have had this one for years and years and years. And I know I spent upwards of $150, but less than $200 for it. I got it up in northern Minnesota in Grand Marais 20 years ago. And it is maybe 15, but it is just worn. I really wear it like a jacket. I just go out. It's very gray, rainy, drizzly here today. And so I just wear it kind of like a coat, an overcoat. But it's got, the standard braids on it. Maybe I'll try to stand up a little here from my chair so that you can see the bottom is all got lice. Those are called lice. Not that kind of lice that we think of in America, but the little dotted stitches. It's fairly long on me and a little bit oversized, so I can wear a big or a lightweight turtleneck or something underneath it if I want to. So someone will probably ask what my sweater is today, but I did not knit it. Although I have knit several Dale sweaters, and I know that in Norway it's pronounced Dala, Dala. Anyway, I've always said Dale, and that's what I'll stick with, just because I think it's easier for people know what I'm talking about. They might think to themselves, I think she's pronouncing that incorrectly, but whatever. I want to talk briefly about a trip that I did this weekend to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That is my hometown. I grew up there. I went through high school there, and then I came to Minnesota for college. So I spent about 18 years in Sioux Falls, and then I really haven't gone back to South Dakota to live. But the Sioux Falls Public Library had me come back to do a book talk about the book Minnesota 52, and they had asked me if I would be willing to come back as a hometown author and speak, and I didn't really know if anyone would show up at the library to listen to someone talk about a knitting book. So I was a little nervous about, whether or not how it would be advertised. I have spoken at the yarn store in Sioux Falls at Athena Fibers. A couple of times I've taught my sweater class there, as well as done a book talk. So I kind of thought I'd kind of hit that market. Didn't know how many knitters would be out looking at the library website to see who would show up, but the entire back row was my family, which was really nice. But my brother and his wife and my nephew came, and I said, oh, Ian should not have to sit through this whole thing. He's like 10. But he did, and he wore his sweater that I did him for Christmas last year. My sister-in-law wore her cowl, and my brother-in-law wore his hat, and my mom had her sweater on. So they were like this cheering section that sat in the back row wearing my hand knitted things. It was really, I don't think anyone else probably thought it was as funny as I did. But hi, Jane, Sioux Falls Public Librarian and knitter friend. There were probably about 15 people that showed up, and it was really blustery in Sioux Falls on Saturday, so I was thinking it's a perfect morning for everyone to just stay home. And while I was there, I was talking to knitters about sweaters, of course, as I usually do, and I wanted to share with you something that I talk about in my sweater workshop. I have a opinion, idea, that I often talk to people about before I begin my sweater class, and that is to take a look in your closet, take a look in your clean clothes laundry basket for the week, and figure out what is the item that you launder regularly or that you constantly have at the front of your closet. The sweater, the top, the shirt that you wear most often. What is that item? And for me, for many years, it was this shirt. Now you're gonna laugh because this is not everyone's style, but this is the shirt that was my go-to in the spring, summer, and fall. And it is older than the hills now, but it was hanging in the basement and I saw it and I thought, this is going to kind of emphasize my point today. The item that you're laundering every week out of your closet, the thing that you wear most often, the thing that you grab to wear on the weekends, every single weekend, your favorite item is the thing you should be knitting. So if it's a sweatshirt, then you need to knit a sweatshirt. If it's a sweater with a zipper up the front, then perhaps you should be putting zippers in the front of your sweaters. If it's got a button band, then you like to leave it open sometimes and close it other times. If it's a long sleeved t-shirt that the sleeves are a little extra long for you, or it hits you at the right spot, or it's just super soft, then that is an item that you should knit for yourself. It's a really good way to have success right off the top, and it's not always knitting the most popular item of the day and going out and seeing what everyone else on Ravelry is knitting or what everyone else on Instagram is knitting, and then knitting that and then not being maybe as happy with it as you might like. You might not, the style might not fit your lifestyle. So I really recommend that people take a look at that and then find a pattern that is close in style or sizing to the item that you want to knit by doing the advanced pattern search on Ravelry. If you haven't done that before, when you go to the upper left-hand corner of the Ravelry pattern search, underneath it, there is an underlined link that says advanced pattern search. And if you click on that, you can narrow down your field of attributes significantly. So you can only pick knitted things. You can only pick paid for patterns. You can only pick free patterns. Because of course I have an opinion on that as well. If you're choosing free patterns, they probably haven't been tech edited. They might not have been test knit. And so they might not be the best pattern for you to start with. If you're a new sweater knitter and you're trying to decide what to knit, you might want to pick a paid for pattern to start with, unless it's a well-known designer that has put up a free pattern. But underneath there, you can also check that you want a V-neck. You want to have certain amount of yarn. How much yarn you have in your stash can be checked in that box. You can check all the characteristics. You can pick just sweaters for females or for males or for children. There's a whole list down the left-hand side that can really narrow down your search to find the thing that you're really looking for. And then when you choose that pattern and you're knitting that pattern, you want to lay that item out on your bed or on your kitchen table and continually lay the item that you're knitting on top of it to see if you're getting the same drape. Are you getting the same fabric? This is completely ribbed, but the rib does not suck in at all. It's a ribbing that is fairly open. And so I would want to make sure that the fabric that I'm getting kind of matches that top that I really like to wear. It's just a way of kind of looking a little bit differently. I often have women come up after the sweater workshop and say to me, I never considered knitting a sweatshirt, but I wear sweatshirts all the time. And there are a lot of sweatshirts out on Ravelry. There are a lot of kind of oversized crew neck, either set-in sleeve, raglan sleeved, sewn in sleeved, kind of oversized, comfortable, slouchy sweatshirt type things that you can knit. And then I've got a lot of tips and tricks in my sweater class about stylizing those sweatshirts and making them your own. But and you can, come and take the class and hear about all of those, which leads me into, I am going to be teaching at the Holiday Stitch Escape December 1st in Columbus, Ohio. It is being sponsored by 614 Knit Studio, and Nationwide Hotel and Conference Center is the venue. And the classes have not filled. They had a big event in September in Columbus, and they didn't start registration until after that event was completely over and done with. And so they're a little behind in getting people to sign up because, number one, they didn't have a huge head start of leeway on, oh, this is an event that's going to happen. And then they're just getting the word out now. So if you are interested, my friend Amber and my friend Stacy are both going to join me if you wanted to meet the greatest test and sample knitter in the world, because she does everything. She never says no, Stacy. And Amber, the art hoarder, is going to come and be there for the entire day. And so if you wanted to come and meet with them and sit around, and I'm going to teach my sweater workshop, 3-hour workshop, my shawl workshop, and then that night, I'm doing my Skeins to Skeins interactive knitting trivia game as well. They've got other teachers as well. I talked about that briefly before, but I did hear from Andrew this week that there are openings in the classes. And so if it's something that you can still swing before, at the end of the month, December 1st is the date. You might want to show up for that and come see the sweater workshop and find out what to do with your sweatshirts. That was a little promo heavy, wasn't it? I have been in touch with the Carolina Fiber Fest people about coming to do my workshops at the Carolina Fiber Fest at the end of March. I do not have a contract for that yet. They're supposed to be coming out this week, but that is March 23rd, 22nd and 23rd in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I'm excited about that. And this weekend is Vogue Knitting Live in Minneapolis. We have had Vogue come every other year. It was not as well attended as they would have liked 2 years ago when they came, so I was kind of surprised that they are giving it another go here. I think, this is just opinion, I think in Minnesota we have so many yarn stores, and the yarn stores have a lot of events and good teachers, and they bring people in, that sometimes when we have an event like Vogue, the knitters aren't showing up because they've just spent, money to go to a workshop at Stephen B. or at the Yarnery or at Darn It Anyway, Amazing Threads or Lakeside. There's just so many yarn stores that they could get a class from that I think it's a little less well attended as it could be. I am taking a couple of classes. I'm taking all day Friday class, so I will not be out and about in the market, which I'd kind of like to be. I'm taking a designer intensive with Josh Bennett out of New York City. It's an all-day designer class. I'm really looking forward to that. And then on Saturday morning, I am taking Patty Lyons' class, Professional Polish, Secrets of the Pros. I hope she has some things to teach me about kind of behind the scenes design work and teaching, because I would really like to do some more teaching and get into some of the bigger shows so that I could kind of travel and see some of the bigger events that are out there, because otherwise I'm probably not going to get to go. Let's be honest. It's all self-serving. Can't believe I just admitted that. But anyway, so Vogue Knitting Live this weekend. If you're around on Saturday, I will be around all in the afternoon. I don't know if I'll go back down on Sunday. It kind of depends. It's my husband's birthday the end of the week, so I should probably cook him a meal this weekend, maybe. Maybe have a little cake or a present or something. That's not yarn. I could just bring him home a big basket of yarn, right? Okay, I have some tips and tricks today to share with you. This is my tipper trick that I teach my beginner knitters after they have learned how to knit and purl, and they're making their hats and they're working in the round, and we're going to decrease for the top of the hat, and I'm going to teach them the knit two together. And this is the little visual device that I teach them about which way a knit two together and an SSK slant. So the knit two together slants, it leans to the right, and the SSK leans left. And you can just look at the kind of visual device there to remember that the two slants to the right and that the S's slant to the left. And once I kind of teach that, I really don't have too much trouble with people forgetting which way is which. You might have your own. I know there are a number of ways that people remember which way the slant leans, but especially like on raglan shaping, when you're coming around, sometimes it's hard for people to remember if they do the SSK first or the knit two together first and then the SSK on the back side. So that's just a little visual reminder for how I do that. And then I had a giveaway on the first or second episode of a cowl pattern, the Falling Leaves cowl pattern, and that person has not claimed their prize. And I didn't know really what to do about that, so I just mentioned it on a previous podcast. And then I went out to Ravelry and I sent her a message and I said, hey, you might want to watch podcast episode, whatever. And she still hasn't claimed her prize. So I'm going to give her prize away to someone else today, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I think sometimes people don't, if they're not regular users of Ravelry, if they're not on it every day, like some of us might be, then they don't check their messages, or they're not used to receiving messages on Ravelry. And one of the things that you can do is to have your Ravelry messages directly email you. And I don't think everybody always knows that. So on your Ravelry message page, if you go to your messages, if you do the drop down menu under your name, and you go to your messages, over in the right hand corner, there is a little tab at the top of the page, and the tab is labeled email settings or email and / notifications, something like that. I printed out the directions from Ravelry on how to do it, but basically when you go to the message box and you click on that tab that says email, you can turn on and off all the different attributes you want. So you can have someone message you and it'll go right to your email. So you would never miss the fact that you won a prize on my podcast and then not get to claim it because it went to your email, something that you might more likely check every day. Kind of self-serving once again, but not everyone is aware of all the features of Ravelry, so I thought that might be kind of a good tip for people, is to be able to go in. If you don't get any messages on Ravelry, then your email's not going to be clogged. It's not like it's a spam folder and they're going to send you a bunch of other stuff. It directly links my Irocknits page on Ravelry, and anytime I get a message, and I really feel like then I can stay on top of my messages. Let's talk about the sweater of the podcast. Today's sweater is the Nicecapades sweater. Once again, we're still in the book. You're getting so tired of the Minnesota 52 book. I will eventually get to sweaters for my sweater class. We're almost there. I don't even know if I have one left to talk about from the book. So I think this might be the last one. And then we're going to move on to sweaters that I have knit that I can talk to you about construction and styling and things like that. But this is the Nicecapades sweater. And here's the picture of the lovely Jennifer. And I have a little story to tell you about that in Cori's stories today. So when Megan and I were deciding to do the book, we had overspent our budget by quite a bit because we worked on the book for about 2 years. And it came down to the time when we were hiring our photographer. We had hired Gail Zucker to come out, and she was originally from Minnesota, so she was willing to stay here and visit some family and friends, and then do 2 days of shooting for us. And one of the things that came up during that time was whether or not we were going to hire a stylist to style the things that were in the book. And a stylist does not come cheaply. And we kind of went back and forth, and I was more in the camp of, yes, we need to do it and we need to make it work somehow, because I don't want to just put everybody in a black t-shirt and jeans and have the whole book kind of be based on, you know, that look. And so we got in touch with someone. We asked around and got in touch with a gal. Her name was Tiffany. And within the first 20 minutes of the photo shoot, she had completely blown us out of the water with what she had provided. I mean, she came with a back end of a car full of clothing, shoes, coats, hats. She had a portable dressing room to hook up around the doors of her car, like a little sheet with clips on top of it, so that the models didn't have to dress and undress out in the open. She just could stand back, and when the photographer was doing her work, Megan and I would be like, you know, we need to kind of change the neckline on that or whatever. And Tiffany would just say, stepping in, and then she'd step in and fix something, and she'd step back so the photographer could stay in kind of the moment. And she was just so good at her job and so professional that it was an amazing experience to have her. She came running across the park with a portable steamer to steam the front of a sweater. She was just really worth her weight in gold. But what happened with this particular sweater on this day, and these pants, I'll try to hold them up really close for you. They've got a little textured at the knee, is that she had sat down with us and she knew all the colors of everything that was going to be shot. And she had these pants, and she came over to Jennifer and said, I have a 2 and a 4. And Jennifer said, they might be too big. That's how petite Jennifer is. And we have had several people ask us now over time whether or not Jennifer was a child, if that's a child sweater, because she just is so small. But she and Joanna, her friend that also modeled for us, both love bunnies. They have bunnies. They were super comfortable around the rabbits. So when the farmer said to the knitwear designers and the photographer, would you like me to get out my Angora bunny? The girls were like, yes, yes. And we were like, well, why not? We may as well. We're on a farm. And so Jennifer just snuggled up with that bunny, had no problem holding that bunny. And I will tell you that we did have to pin those pants in the back. They were too small or too big for her. And so she's wearing this sweater back here, which is done in Blue Moon Fiber Arts Targi. We've talked about that before. That yarn is absolutely wonderful. And it's knit from the bottom up with an all over textured stitch. So it almost looks like little snowflakes falling down. I have one right here, a black one, if I show it really close. Can you see how that has little, it has little fuzz balls all over it. I wind yarn on this table, and this table can get a little dusting of. Oh, that's a little tacky, but whatever. The top of the yoked sweater has about 13 rows of color work, and that color work has sequins in it. And so the mohair sparkles, tiny little sequins in the yarn. Can you see it? So the mohair on the black really makes it look like a snowflake. It also on the navy really makes it look like a snowflake with the little sequins in it. This has a bottom split hem, so you're working the front piece for 2 to 3 inches, and then you're working the back piece, and then you're joining them in the round, so you have a split hem at the bottom. It is meant to be tunic length and long sleeved, although you could definitely make it high hip length and you could make it short. Several people asked me if they could do it without the snowflakes. If you come from somewhere where there's no snow, maybe you don't want snowflakes on your sweater. So absolutely, you could just do a plain with that little snowflake stitch all over the entire sweater. The sweater does come in a wide variety of sizes. It starts out quite small. I think we go from a 32-inch bust to a 50-inch bust, and that is every 2 inches apart all the way up. So you've got a really wide range of choices for bust circumference. And then on Joanna, it was actually, on Jennifer, it was knit at the 34 or 36 inch, and she's probably more like a 30 inch, so it's probably got 4 to 6 inches of positive ease on her. I'm trying to remember, that was quite a while ago, but so it's quite roomy on her, so you could knit, you know, you just look at the schematic. People ask me this all the time about positive and negative ease, and the best way to gauge what size to make in the pattern is to look at the schematic. And every pattern that's for a sweater should have a schematic, and it should tell you what the finished measurements of that sweater are. So the schematic here for this one, it's got all the different numbers, and then you just go to the bust circumference and you say to yourself, okay, the finished bust measurement of this sweater for a size 32 inch bust is a 36 inch bust measurement. So it's got 4 inches of positive ease. That means that around your body, you will have 4 inches of extra fabric for that particular size. Not all patterns will tell you what size the model is wearing and how much ease it should have, but you can always figure it out for yourself by going to the schematic and looking at those numbers and saying, okay, is it sized, is the finished dimension of the size 32 a 32? Then that means it has no negative or positive ease. It's going to fit you exactly the same size that you are. I've heard from people in my sweater workshops that they can't wear yoked sweaters if they're very broad shouldered, or they feel as if it draws attention to their broad shoulders. This sweater with its narrow yoke sweater might be a better fit for you than the wider colorwork swath. If this gets up a little bit closer to the neckline, then it's called a necklace yoke. And so I have a sweater in my sweater class that I have people who think that yoke sweaters don't work well for them can try on that necklace sweater, because it's just a little bit closer to the neck and draws more attention to the face and less to the width of the shoulders. This one doesn't actually hit out too far on at the width, the widest part of someone's shoulders, so it might be an option for you. This sweater does not have seams, but it does have a faux side seam that is done to give it some structure. I was going to mention that all of my new patterns, the things that I have designed in the last, since the book came out, so a year in June, all are now checklist patterns. I'm a huge marker up of patterns. I like to check things off, cross things out as I go through them, mark things off. And it has just really occurred to me that that is the way that I prefer all my patterns to be written. So why wouldn't I do all of my patterns that way? So a couple of my shawls, my Pontini patterns, my Attagirl sweater, they have check boxes in front of every single instruction that you have to do. If there's something in the row that you have to do, then it has a checkbox in front of it, so you can work your way through it. And I just find that so many times knitting gets put down and you don't come back to it, and you say to yourself, I'm going to remember where I'm at on this. It won't be hard for me to remember because I just divided for the sleeves, or I've just done the last row of this. And then you come back to it later and you sit down and you say, I have no idea where I'm at. Now I have to reread the pattern from the beginning and figure out all the rows that I've done up until that point. So I just thought that I had a note about that 2 podcasts ago, and then I cleaned up the table and there's the note. And then last podcast I cleaned up the table and there was the note, and I was like, you should just really mention that and tell people that. There is also now I'm going to talk about this and I don't know exactly. Joyce of the Ply Podcast. Hi girls. Love your podcast. She has a form that she sells on Etsy that you can plug in your pattern to, and so it becomes a checklist pattern. I will look that up, the name of what it's called, and put it in the show notes because I've looked at it before, and it's a form. She also does format patterns for designers and knitters, and she will make up the form for the pattern so that it becomes a checklist pattern. So it might be something that you want to check out. I met those gals last year in Wisconsin, I think, at Wisconsin Sheep and Wool, and they've got a great rapport, great funny podcast, Ply Podcast, -PLY. Hey, so let's do some giveaways. Who won the book? Who won the Adventure North book? Guess what? Number 3, Java Jenny. Jenny in Wisconsin. Hi, Jenny. Jenny's done some sample knitting and test knitting for me. And Jenny, I was going to address your package today because I thought, well, I'll just do that right now as soon as I drew your name. And I don't think I have your new address, so I'm glad I didn't send it to the old one because you have recently moved. So, hey, Jenny. Who won the yellow yarn from Juniper Moon? That beautiful yellow cotton yarn? T. Haddis, Tammy from Arizona, number 13. So get in touch with me with your address and I will ship this off to Arizona, which it's going to be perfect for an Arizona knitter. Yellow and cotton, really nice. And then I drew names in that pattern giveaway until I ran into, until everything was given away at least once. So for the person that wanted the Winter Sunset Cowl, you were the first number I drew. P. Phenley, that's Pam in Idaho, number 37. And I already gifted that to you today. And the person that wanted number 35 wanted Mr. Tom's Field Socks. And so I gifted that to Carolyn in Wisconsin this morning. And number 4 wanted the Cahoots sweater, which wasn't even on the list. I don't think, but it is in the book, and all the patterns in the book have now gone up as for individual sale on Ravelry. So if you were waiting to just buy one pattern instead of buying the entire Minnesota 52 book, they are all up for individual sale now on Ravelry. And so I had the Cahoots sweater out there. Sarah in Alabama, you said you liked the Cahoots sweater. If you already own the book, let me know and I will gift you a different pattern. Then number 13, Emslittlenest wanted the Attagirl sweater. So Emma in New Zealand. So that was super exciting for me to have someone in New Zealand. So hi, Emma. And you can do the Attagirl sweater. And then dnyquist, Deb in Wisconsin, wanted the Hootenanny hoodie, number 16. I only had to draw one extra number to give all those patterns away. So that was kind of fun because I got to go through that entire listing and gift all those patterns this morning, and I was happy to do it. And this time we will give away the Chim-in-ney hat to someone. So if you want to go out to Ravelry and get that taken care of. And then I redrew for the cowl. Remember the falling leaves cowl that didn't get claimed, and I just would kind of really like to send it out because fall is going to be gone and it's been sitting here. And so I chose, it was number 2, Amy H6644, and that's Amy in Minnesota. And you can get the falling leaves cowl. Just let me know your address and your first and last name, and I will get that out to you. So that you can maybe get it knit before it snows. Oh, I think that's supposed to be tomorrow. Sorry. Well, you could still knit it and wear it. Okay, what else is on my list here? I have some yarn to give away. I was digging through my stash the other day and I was trying to find something. I can't remember what. And I came across these 2 skeins of yarn and I was like, what do I have these for? My yarn is sorted and categorized by project pretty much, except for this. So although this looks like a lot of, quite a few skeins, this is my only yarn that is not slated for a project right up front. I shop pretty exclusively for sweaters quantities and sweater projects. So when that quantity of yarn comes home, I put it in a Sterilite, clear Sterilite box with the pattern, and it is sitting in there. And I have 2 closets. Maybe I'll edit that out. I have a lot of boxes in the closet, in the one closet, 2 closets, because I outgrew the office closet, which has never been able to have any office supplies in it. I think, yeah, you guys all know, I said in the book, I think I had 70 sweaters quantities at one time. I knit 20 sweaters in a year sometimes, so to have that many is not too overwhelming to me. But look what I found. 2 skeins, not a sweaters quantity, of Madeline Tosh single gray yarn. Tosh Merino in the Turn colorway. It's really quite pretty. Someone would enjoy this much more than I would. Now, I could probably knit it up into a cowl or hat for Christmas presents, but I'm not gonna, because I'll always pick a color over this. So it is 100% merino wool, worsted weight, 210 yards. So you're gonna have 420 yards of gray, beautiful yarn that you can win on the podcast. So go out to the Ravelry thread. I'll probably do it separate from the Chim-in-ney hat, because the people who want this might not want the hat, and the people who want the hat might not want this. I have no finished objects to show this week because I had giant finished objects come off the needle this weekend that I'm going to be able to tell you about probably on the next podcast. It went to the tech editor today. I took it to drop it off, and it is going to be a mystery / not mystery knit along right around the holidays. And it's a collaboration with Leading Men Fiber Arts and myself. And I'm super excited about the idea and the concept and what we came up with for all of you. So look for that to kind of go live. I'm sure Steve will talk about it on his podcast as well. The Leading Men Fiber Arts podcast. If you're, Dramatic Knits. Yeah, Steve and Andy. Sorry, I got the names confused there, but yeah, it's something that I probably knit on for about 2 weeks and ripped and knit and ripped and got the complete design done, the pattern written and off the needles this weekend. So I can't show it yet, but soon, and I'm really excited to now be able to sit down. I have 4 sweaters completely knit except for the yoke. So I'm at the fun part of 4 sweater projects, and I have not been able to knit for myself for weeks. And so I have kind of taken a little bit of time here because my mom's going to have that surgery next Thursday. If you could keep her in your thoughts and prayers, and then they'll be staying with us and recuperating after that major back surgery she's having. So I kind of took some design time off. I haven't contracted to design with anyone for the next probably 8 weeks, and then I'll get started up again. I just want to take a minute to say happy birthday to Angela, Beagle Mom Knitter, to Jan Tegas from my knitting group today, and it's Amber's birthday at the end of the week. So let's all go out and wish Amber just the happiest of birthdays this week. I have a few questions that were in the question thread on Ravelry from people, and I need to answer a couple of them up front, and I'm going to push one off until the next time. Fiber Therapy reached out to me on Ravelry and asked me if I would know of a resource for lining a sweater. She had knit a sweater for her husband, if I remember correctly, and she was going to put a zipper in it, and it needed to be lined. And I am not a sewist, and although I was raised by a sewist, when I was in junior high, I made a lot of my own clothes, my own pants, and I don't know where that sewing trait went, but it is completely gone because I have no desire whatsoever right now to sew. But I went out and asked on Craftsy. I just went to the Craftsy help community, and they have a chat. And I just said, do you have a class on lining a sweater? And they did. And they got right back to me. And so I went out and told Fiber Therapy that there was she wanted a tutorial. She was really looking for a tutorial. Same thing for ADH74. And I've had quite a few people now ask me about knitting color work. And I'm going to try to give some tips every week, but I really feel like the best way to learn how to do color work is either one, just try it, cast on a hat, and knit with 2 colors, and just see how it goes for yourself, or take a class. So I also asked on Craftsy what are the top color work classes that they offer, and those are also in that Ravelry thread, the question thread. I linked 3 classes for her on knitting color work. So the lining a sweater tutorial and the 2-handed color work are out on the Ravelry thread. Chris Osborne, hi Chris. Amber says she knows you, or that you watch her podcast at least. I don't know if she really knows you in person. But you also asked me about being fearful or a little nervous about color work. This is what I'll tell you. Your best bet, if you really want to learn color work knitting and learn the 2-handed method, which not everybody wants to do, and some of the best knitters in the world don't use 2 hands, you need to learn how to pick your yarn. And by picking, I mean you need to learn how to knit continentally with the yarn in your left hand. And so most of you throw your yarn, and if you don't and you pick with your left, then you need to learn how to throw. And I would just say that you need to make the decision to sit down and knit a cowl or a hat entirely by picking. However you wrap your yarn on your right hand, if you wrap it around your little finger and over your first finger, and just look at how you wrap it, that's how you want to hold it on your left hand. So you figure out, you do the exact same, so that should feel fairly natural. However, if you weave it in and out of your fingers, then you should weave it in and out on the left side. And then you just reach under the stitch and pull the stitch from behind through. So that's why it's called picking, because you pick that stitch off the needle. If you can learn that technique, you really don't need to learn how to purl in your left hand unless you're going to do like Bauhaus sweaters, which have those purl bumps and those purl rows with your left hand. Otherwise, you can just almost always, knit in the round on the outside by picking with your left and throwing with your right, all knit stitches pretty much. So it isn't a matter of learning both things right away. And I would just recommend that you sit down and commit to learning how to pick first before you jump into the color work and trying to do it with 2 fingers. That's how I did it. I said to my teacher, I think you're more efficient than I am. And she said, it's not all about efficiency, Cori. I said, I know, but I want to be faster. And so she said, okay, well then, and I was taking the Wallaby class from her. And she said, then just knit the whole sweater continental. You cannot have the yarn in your right hand for this whole sweater. And I took that as a challenge and said, okay, then I'm just going to knit this entire and the Wallaby is knit in the round. It's a tube and the sleeves are in the round. And so I just picked or knit continentally that entire sweater. And that's how I converted to learning how to pick. Then when you go to do yarn in both hands, you've had so much practice with your left hand because you've done an entire project with it. You haven't just tried it for a few stitches, that doing it with both hands just is not nearly as difficult. I will try to do more tips each time because I teach a whole 6 weeks of color work, but I think you're better off having someone who can look over your shoulder, or you can look over their shoulder and you can see exactly what they're doing with tensioning. Like for trapping floats and things like that, it's just, if you can't see what I'm doing right here, that's going to be kind of tough. So anyway, those were a couple of questions I had. And then Knit Takes Two asked me about short rows this week. And I have so much to say about short rows. So much. So many opinions that I'm going to put it off till next time. I have some handouts on short rows. I have a story about short rows. And so I'm going to kind of gather, because I just read that question this morning and I thought, gosh, I could do a good job at talking about that if I took some time to kind of gather my thoughts and do a little teaching moment on short rows. So I think I will wait for that for the next podcast. And I've had a couple people reach out to me and say, I've been waiting for your podcast to come out. I will podcast every other Tuesday. My podcast will be up every other Tuesday. So I'm just trying to stick to that schedule. And you know why? I'm not, this is going to sound crazy. What's new? I couldn't decide which day of the week was the best week to put up a podcast, because some people are off on the weekends, some people are off during the week, some people are too busy on the weekends. And so one of my favorite podcasts is What Should I Read Next? It's an audio podcast where Anne asks people their 3 favorite books, one book they hate, and what they're currently reading. And then she recommends 3 books for them. My reading to be read list has just grown so much from listening to her podcast. And hers comes out every other Tuesday. So I thought there must be something to it. It's a super popular podcast. It's very well done. Hers is audio. It probably has nothing to do with video podcast. But I picked every other Tuesday. I thought that way I would have the weekend to kind of prepare everything, and I could sit down on Mondays or Sundays and kind of get my ideas together. I just thought of something else that I did last week. I usually walk away from this podcast at the end and I say, oh, I forgot to, or I didn't talk about, or something like that. I told Amber I did this. She laughed. Last week I forgot a couple of things that I felt were fairly important. So the next day, while I was editing, I went in and put the clothes on that I had on the day before, came back in, put the setup up in this room, and edited in. I could have just, stuck my head in front of the camera and said, hey, I forgot to say this, but that's a little crazy. I know. I might edit this out too. Because now you could all go back and look at last week's and be like, yeah, her hair looked completely different that day, because it looks different every day when you're growing out your bangs. Anyway, I have really enjoyed laughing at myself today for your pleasure. I'm going to go feed the dog because daylight savings happened and pets do not understand daylight savings. So now he wants to eat an hour earlier. And for the last few years, he's done this, and he really doesn't ever kind of assimilate back into the old time. So he is surely gone from 5:30 feedings to 5 o'clock feedings to 4:30 feedings. And now today he wants to eat at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He's whining in the mudroom, and my phone is blowing up from my group chat on the kitchen table. So it's just been going off. So I just want to thank you all so much for joining me every week on this journey. If you're around at Vogue, come say hi to me. I will have some pins along with me, some Irocknits pins and some Knit Cahoots pins. And until I see you in 2 weeks, keep it colorful.